Welcome back, friends, to the show that is all about friendship and connection. If you're new to Girls Just Want to Tell Stories, welcome. We are so happy you're here. Maybe you found us through Facebook or Instagram, or maybe it was Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or maybe a friend recommended this podcast to you. However it is you found us, thank you for being here today. We would love to have you subscribe so you never miss an episode or a story. Hey, it's Janine.
And hi, I'm Katie, and we're girls that just want to tell stories. And today, episode 7, we're going to be talking about hard truths when friends are brutally honest. Things that you may know, you may not know, but these are really important conversations to have. And I also want to take a quick moment and welcome back all of our girls listeners. We know you're out there and we appreciate you. We especially appreciate the husband and wife team who listen to us concurrently. We love that. We love to have teams listening to us. So it's the beginning of February, and February from the Latin word Februarius means to purify. So we thought it was kind of a good start to the new year to purify friendships and dig deep in talking about the honest, hard truths, and ones that maybe our friends have brought to our attention and maybe ones that we brought to their attention. But, hopefully we're all open enough to really hear what the friends have to say and, really know that they're doing it in our best interest and vice versa. Mostly so far in our podcast, we've talked about light and fun friendship topics, but today we really wanted to kind of dig deep. And for those of us who are in this for the long haul, we know that there's bound to be tough conversations along the way. And I believe, as Janine, that hard truths must be faced and talked about and dealt with in order for friendships to really, grow deeper and more meaningful as the years move on.
Yeah. Well, and we thought we'd start with a funny story. It's actually a story of a friend of mine. She was getting ready to speak at a conference, a leadership conference, and she decided to do an experiment. And so she took lipstick and rubbed it all over her teeth. So not just like a little smudge, but like all over. And then she proceeded to walk around a room with 150 people.
Oh my gosh.
To see, if anyone would say anything. And what do you think the result of her experiment was?
I'm going to say very few said something.
Yeah.
They all noticed. They all noticed.
They all noticed. And here's how she knows. So you're right. Only 3 people out of like 150 said a word.
Wow.
And that evening, after she went and took the lipstick off, they're like at a social evening event, and she heard lots of conversations about her teeth and the lipstick, like people talking about it, right?
But not to her?
But not to her, kind of thing as well. So the next day she gets on stage and gives her presentation, and she lets them all in on the fact that they were in an experiment that they all failed. But her topic, she was talking about the fact that people resist, shy away from, avoid giving feedback, even if it's, what's the harm in telling someone they have, lettuce in their teeth or lipstick on their teeth?
Sure.
But people avoid it. And in fact, that's kind of an area of expertise for her. And she is actually writing a book about how to give feedback in a better way. And so we'll have to have her on the show when she's ready to publicize it. But, feedback's hard. And we thought it was important today to kind of explore what happens when you give it, when you don't give it to your friends. So that's what we're doing here today. And, a lot of times when we maybe have attempted to give somebody a hard truth or some feedback, we're met with anger or defensiveness, or sometimes people just are really blindsided, and that's a little bit of our brain like tricking us and sending us into that fight or flight mode, which is why it's hard to hear it sometimes, right? So if you've received that reaction, it's pretty common, and but there are ways that you can better receive feedback also. And so we're going to try to give you some tips today on how to use the feedback that someone might share with you in a way that's useful. And what I've found is it's all about how you deliver the message too, right? Like is it the kind of the right timing makes a difference, but also, are you sending a text message when maybe you should be calling or trying to set up a time to meet with somebody in person? There's a lot of cues that we give away when we see somebody face to face that are lost in an email or texting. And so you really need to think about how you're going to deliver whatever it is you have to say. And then, it's all sorts of things like your tone of voice and your style of communication. For some people, and we know people like this, in our lives, I'm sure everybody does, they're very direct, and it's very easy to say what it is they have to say.
Right.
Other people, that's not the case. But if they come at somebody with their style, the other person, might almost be like mowed over by it. So,
right.
We've all got to think about who it is we're trying to share the information with and adjust our style to hopefully meet them where they're at so they can actually hear what it is we have to say.
Right. Well, it's the whole Oreo effect. Have you heard that story?
Mm-mm.
So the Oreo, right? So
Yeah.
you start with something nice and then you hit them in the center and then you end with something nice. So it's like positive. Oh, here's your feedback and positive. So
yeah.
You can Oreo your friend.
And, I often think if my friends aren't telling me how it is, who is going to, right? Like I can't expect
good point.
Stranger on the street or,
yeah, but it's easier sometimes to tell a complete stranger something than it is somebody that you care about and fear that, oh my God, what if she takes this the wrong way? What if she's mad at me? What if,
That's true. That's why we just divulge our whole personal history to people on an airplane that we don't know and we'll never see again after 2 hours, right? So that's true. And there are different times when we've maybe said something to somebody and, it's cost a friendship, but conversely, you can not say something that maybe needs to be said and you can still lose the friendship, right? So it's kind of, it's a hard balance to strike, but we're here today to encourage people to think about, when they have something to say, can they say it and how should they say it? And if you're the one they're saying it to, how to be more open to it.
Right. Well, and I also think your upbringing has a little bit of, the response or how you, are able to give or receive hard truths. I know in my family, we never talked about anything. So we came, I say that I come from a family of stuffers. You just stuff it. You don't talk about your feelings. So for me to really say something to somebody is enormous. I mean, it really takes me a lot of thought. I'm more of a keyboard warrior. I feel better behind words versus the spoken words. So I tend to send things in an email, which may or may not be the most effective. But I feel like I have more control because when I get in front of somebody, I can chicken out or cry or I don't know, not be able to say what I really need to say in a very loving and kind way to be received properly.
Why don't you tell us about a time when you were the recipient of a hard truth, right? Wasn't a time when you had to figure out what to say, but someone had something to say to you.
Well, and you're looping back to what you said about being able to receive it. I did feel blindsided a little bit. It was, and you know how you have these moments in your life where you just can picture it so clearly. We were camping in Yellowstone with some of our dear friends and all of our kids were there. And, our oldest son was a challenge to parent and it's not a secret. We talk to him about it now. We laugh about it now, but he was tough. And I felt like my parenting style with him was always just really hard and always trying to steer him and keep him in line and, not thinking that other people could really see how I was behaving, but clearly they did. And so we were kind of all in our friend's motorhome, probably having some wine, and in front of the husbands, my girlfriend very kindly brought to my attention, something about my parenting style. And I remember I was shocked maybe that somebody else noticed, right? But it really did hit me, and I remember, truth rings true. So I knew what she was saying. She meant it with love. And it really made me stop and pause and think, wow, I really need to examine how I'm parenting because other people are noticing. And so for me, it was very strong feedback, very important feedback. And I'm glad that I was in a place where I could really hear her. Because otherwise I could have said, forget you. What do you don't know what you're talking about. But I really thought, wow, she sees this and was trying to help, which I believe she did.
Yeah. I think one great kind of technique to use when people tell you something, whatever it is I always kind of ask myself, what is the truth in this? Like, there's always some truth, probably, right? Like,
Sure.
because even if your immediate response is like, oh, I don't see it that way, or
right.
So trying to find that grain of truth at the onset brings the conversation to a common place where you can then kind of move from. And when you're the one receiving it, it's sometimes you'll just need to take it in and take a pause and a break and come back to that conversation. But another great way to have the conversation is to ask that person more questions, right? Tell me more about what you've seen, like, so that they can really help you understand what it is they're seeing. And that's not a defensive question. It's like, help me understand where you're coming from. I want to hear more. And it's okay to say, oh, wow, I'm kind of surprised by this, but let's talk about it. Right.
I wasn't able to ask questions at that point. Yeah. I felt defensive at first, but then it really sunk in and I thought, she's right. She's really right. So I tried to work from that piece moving forward to try and be a better parent.
And then see, I see that as that is an act of friendship, right?
Yes.
And this idea that friendship is a verb, that really is an act of friendship in my view. And when I'm talking about in the kind of corporate leadership training environment that I work in, when I'm talking about feedback also, I always talk about it as a gift. And I know people sit there and roll their eyes at me in the audience, right? They're like,
well, when I read that in your notes, I thought, okay, I appreciate it, but that's going to take some work.
Exactly. Well, because, that is how we get better and how we grow sometimes, is to see things that maybe we can't see because we're in it, right? You're in parenting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, kind of thing. And,
right.
And that's what someone who's maybe sharing a hard truth is doing for us. They're holding up a mirror. And I mean, it's hard to look in that mirror sometimes and to see what's reflecting back at us, but only when we do that can we choose to maybe do something different, right? And so after that, Katie, did you try some different things with your son?
Well, I just remember feeling like, okay, how I'm parenting isn't a one-way street. Like, people can see and it affects everybody around. Mm-hmm. So I really tried to watch my words and kind of treat, my stepson with more kindness, even though, he always was just pushing buttons and he was just such a hard kid to parent. But I really tried after that, and really made me take a step back thinking, okay, this is, it's a village, it takes a village, right? You do appreciate other people sort of looking out for you and your kids. So I did appreciate that.
Well, and the good news is he's a grown man.
Oh, he is. He's a grown ass man.
I was going to say that, but and you guys are, and he's like, advising us on how to do our podcast. And
yes,
so, for all the parents out there who are struggling, whether it's, the toddler years, the middle school years, the high school years, they're all the phases, and they all have their challenges, but eventually those kids, they become, adults and your friends. And
well, and it's funny too. So I just had a conversation with him this week. He calls me and he says, okay, feel free to say no. And I said, okay, say no to what? And so he goes on to this whole story about a girl that he works with, and she's struggling and she has some, emotional issues and is not close to her mother. And so he was wondering if he could have her call me so I could talk to her. And I thought, wow, I guess I didn't suck that bad as a parent if he's willing to loan me out to some girl that needs help. And so I have reached out to her. I have not heard back. He says that she's shy, but I think that's a really great compliment that, here's my stepmom. She wasn't so bad. You give her a try. See if she can help you. But
So and that's another form of feedback, right? Coming to you in the form of something positive, which
sure, absolutely.
we could all do more of as well. But so you and I had a moment. I mean, over 40 years of friendship, we're going to have times where we have hard truths to share with each other. And we were on a trip. This wasn't that many years ago in Nashville, back when you could travel and go to bars and dance.
Oh,
And
the fun times.
I know. But we had a moment then when you shared something with me that you had been holding on to for over 20 years. So why don't we talk a little bit about that for our listeners?
Oh boy.
Oh,
It was hard. I felt guilty. I carried it with me for a long time, but I thought I can't share this with her. And, some liquid courage, a little bit of wine, and I was able to just sort of blurt it out. And your response was just so gracious. And you said, I appreciate it, but it really wouldn't have changed the outcome. So you sort of gave me that gift, right? I had carried this for so long, and you were very, very
that's
sweet.
okay.
And I appreciate that. So that's a lesson, right? That I was so worried to share something with you. And you just said, and it's not like it was a surprise to you necessarily,
right?
But you said, it wouldn't have changed the outcome. If you had said it to me at that day, it would not have changed the outcome of
Because that's the other thing to think about, right? So we might share, maybe if you had shared it in the moment, right? Well, what I was saying is that I don't think it would have mattered. Sometimes we will share a hard truth with a friend and it's not going to change their decision or their course or their action.
Correct.
But at least we can say it and maybe not have to carry it like you did that was a weight, right? That was looming all these years and you wondering if maybe it would have made a difference. And I'm glad we could talk about the fact, even if it was many years later, that it wouldn't have. But, when you think about like the types of hard truths that we're talking about, I mean, it's often, about, maybe somebody's child, or it's about their spouse or partner or potential spouse or partner.
Yes.
Or
it's big stuff.
It's they're drinking too much or eating too many edibles. Who knows, right? They're serious things usually, or maybe they're in a job that you don't think is serving them. Those are all you can offer is a perspective, right? You're seeing all those situations from a different point of view, and you can share that, and they will do with it what they will, right? Some people will choose to make change based on it. But that's not the outcome we can plan on, right? So when you go into sharing a truth, you can't be too attached to the outcome of what's going to happen.
Yes, amen.
Right? Yeah. So that's something I've learned also. And I was in the hairdresser's chair. There's always stories there, and my gal was saying that a friend of hers, where she had a hard truth to share, she shared it, and her friend wasn't really willing or able to hear it, and it did cause the friendship to falter and to fall apart. And I asked her, I said, do you regret having said what you said? And she said no, because she felt it ultimately helped the situation. So she was glad that she spoke. She's sad and sorry that the friendship, wasn't repaired. But on the other hand, sometimes a friendship can, go dormant or be idle for many years, and you never know, right? What could happen. So that I thought was interesting too, where she really, and she didn't think long or hard about it. She's like, no, I wouldn't have changed what I said. And so,
well, and I think too, many years ago in Santa Rosa, there was a clairvoyant named Betty Bethards, and she would hold
I remember
monthly.
Betty.
She would hold monthly presentations, and she would have a topic that she talked about. And it's going to sound really sappy, but I swear, listening to her, and this was probably what, the early 2000s, late 1990s, listening to her really did change my life. It was, she talked a lot about, thoughts are things and your mind's a computer. It does what you tell it. And she would always say, you can deliver any message as long as you deliver it with love.
Mhm.
And so I thought, wow, okay. So we're talking about hard truths. I think if we keep that thought, like we're doing this not to be mean or
Right.
bring the other person down, but really love is the intention to make your friendship better, or you want to help, or maybe if it's even unsolicited,
Right.
as long as it's coming from a place of love and kindness. I think that that sort of softens the hard truth a little bit as well.
Yeah, so that helps you if that's your how you come to it, and then for the person hearing it to remind yourself that assume good intention, right? So if I
Yes.
assume good intention, I'm assuming you're not telling me this to maliciously hurt me and
Right.
bring me down, that I'm assuming that
Right.
you have good intent. It totally changes the tone of the conversation and the ability for hopefully something to good to come of it. um,
Well, and usually hard truths as well. It's not something um, genuinely that just comes out of the blue. I mean,
right.
usually if it's a hard truth, it's something that you've been thinking about for a while. Maybe you've seen your friend struggling with it for a while. So maybe you really do try to plan, make notes of what you want to say and
Right.
think of a time when you can deliver the message where it's heard.
Well, and it's a hard truth when you are running that script in your head over and
Yes.
over and over again, right? Like I've done that,
Yes.
where that really should be a signal for us that, like, okay, I'm putting continued energy into this. I probably need to actually say something.
Sure.
Um, and and I do think it makes perfect sense to be thoughtful and in a sense prepared, and prepared for what their objections are going to be. What's the pushback going to be, and how can you be ready to again manage that conversation so it doesn't explode or turn into something that's harmful and hurtful to the relationship, to the friendship. um,
Right.
so I was sharing too, and sometimes these hard truths don't necessarily, like you were saying, sometimes maybe even the closer the friendship, the harder it can be.
Yes.
I have a situation that I was reminded of when we were thinking about this topic, when I was working um, in a large company, and I had worked with this woman for over a decade, 12, 13, 14 years, whatever it was, a long time. So lots of history. And we were sitting down in like the company outdoor patio for lunch or whatever, and chatting, and she just looked at me and just asked, "What's up?" And I'm like, well, what do you mean? And she's just said, look, you have not been you in quite some time. What's up? And that just, man, opened the floodgate. And I would say, she was, when we talked in our one episode about circles, right? She wasn't in that
Yep.
inner circle. She was in a different sphere for me. But again, someone who knew me enough to know I hadn't been myself. And she was right. I had been, separated from my husband, going through divorce proceedings and keeping all of that very separate from work, and trying to go in every day with my suit and my briefcase and my compartmentalization of my life,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
thinking that I was fooling
Yep.
people.
Yep.
And she just called me on that BS, and just like, you know, but she did it in such a subtle, kind, nice way. I sat there at that table and cried and told her the whole story. And then after that, I felt very safe within the work environment to talk about what was going on,
Right.
and get the support that I needed during that time from people who did care a lot about me. I mean, I
Sure.
worked somewhere for almost 20 years, so you become very
Right.
close to those people, and get married, and you have children, and you get divorces, and people die, and all sorts of things happen over a
Right.
lifetime career like that. So that was someone who, she didn't even wasn't like she had something to say to me, like,
Right.
but she's just like, something's up, and
Right.
I can see your pain. And I was like,
Right.
wow, I will never forget.
See, you can't hide it. Like me thinking I'm hiding my parenting style for
Right.
everyone, like they can see it. So that's great.
Yeah.
Was that your neighbor? Was she
No,
your neighbor? Oh,
no, no, no,
oh,
no. But I did have a neighbor who would be quick to share things, which was helpful. So I did want to just remind people, I felt a little bit like with this episode, since this is one of my areas of interest, communication and that sort of thing, but there really are things that, are important. And a big one is listening, right? I think we all worry about a lot what we're going to say. And we need to pay equal attention to being a good listener. So even like the last story I just shared, that woman said, 8 words or whatever, what's
right.
up, kind of thing.
Right.
And then she just listened to me. I mean, we probably sat there for 45 minutes before we had to kind of get back to work. And so we can be better friends to each other by opening the door to be able to then listen to somebody who may have something to share. Sometimes we need the invitation to let
Right.
it out and let it go. If someone was talking to me about, maybe they thought I was having, drinking too much or what have you,
Right.
maybe I'm dying to talk to somebody about my depression or how I'm feeling or whatever it is. And so that again is where what you might be avoiding and thinking is hard is really the most helpful, kind, compassionate thing that you can do for somebody.
Right.
Right. And
And
so,
I think it's important too, as you're talking about the listening, I know we as humans feel like I have to have a response. I have to be able to help her. What am I going to say? When a lot of times they don't need that. They
right.
just need somebody to listen to them. I mean, as you're sharing this story,
Yeah.
you weren't looking to her to solve your problems, but just to
No.
having an ear to listen to you really, offered you, solace, which is what you needed at the time. I think that's great.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And without getting too nerdy about brain science, you know, I said earlier, we do have it's prehistoric kind of reaction in us. It's a fight or flight, that if we feel threatened, um,
Yes.
whether it's a saber-toothed tiger or it's somebody's words, if we feel threatened, our brain, the thinking part of our brain, the rational part of our brain, it shuts down, and the part of our brain that tells us to run
Yes.
kicks in. And so all of us having an awareness of that, the biology and the physiology of that, can also help us catch ourselves in the moment of, oh, I'm feeling like I want to run from this conversation, but I'm going to take a
Sure.
deep breath and I'm going to continue to listen and talk to this person, and
Sure.
maybe come out of this conversation in a better place than I entered it in. Um,
Well, I'm going to jump in just to a piece of maybe unsolicited kind feedback. I was telling you before we started taping here today, there's 2 boys in my neighborhood, and they're always on their bikes and they're riding around. They're probably between 8 and 10 years old, and they'll always say, "Oh, I like your dog," or "You've got a cute dog," or something. They're just such nice boys. And as I was walking Rocco before taping this, I noticed that the mom's got like "Happy Birthday, Dylan," or whatever the kid's name is, in big letters on the lawn. And I thought, I'm going to go to her door today. I don't know the mother. I've never met I only know the kids, but I wanted to tell her, whenever I see your boys or I interact with them in the street, they're so kind. Because I remember 2 occasions where people knocked on my door to share things about my kids that, weren't very positive. And so I thought, you kind of want to have feedback in the world about how your children are to other people, because that's important.
yeah.
And I'll let you know how that goes. I'm sure this lady, hopefully she doesn't slam the door in my face like, who is this freak? But I just thought, offering her that unsolicited kindness, like she's doing a good job, because we all sort of need that positive feedback as well. Like, you're doing a good job.
Yeah.
Whatever you're doing, it's working.
I always tell people, don't be stingy with your compliments or your kind words,
Yes.
your affirmation, because we all need it. That is a shared
Yes.
human need. And I don't care what gender you are, how old you are, anything, we all could use some acknowledgement that we're doing something well or right.
Yep.
And that's what keeps us doing it, right? And that feedback for that mom who hopefully will reinforce it with her kids, those kids are going to, continue to hopefully not be the ones like that toilet paper your house or whatever,
Right.
whatever
Oh my gosh.
kids do. I know, and it's great. We always try to leave our listeners with some tips and some inspiration for what to do. And I wanted to share yesterday, I was at my beach yoga class, my studio called Esso Live Well here in Orange County. They have been doing beach yoga since all the pandemic has really cut down on the in-person classes. And my teacher yesterday, Lauren, she was listening to the podcast and she shared, and I wanted to share because this keeps us going. This is feedback that we got that keeps us coming back online with you. She said that in high school, she was always the one, organizing the get-togethers, the sleepovers, the parties, the fun for the friends. But over years, over time, it takes a lot of energy. So she got kind of tired and that kind of fell away. And listening to us talk about friendship and the importance of nurturing your friendships, she hopped on it, organized a Zoom gathering for a group of her girlfriends, and
go Lauren! Yay! I love that.
So stoked to hear that just by taking 20-30 minutes to listen to our podcast, that her friendships will be the better for it. So we hope that you will go and make your friendships better. In this case, maybe it's by sharing something you've been holding on to, even if it's been for many, many years. It still might be worth it as much for you at this point, right, than the person you're even sharing it with, because maybe the situation is long past. But you guys can meet each other with that kind of grace that comes from a true friendship.
Yes. And we will end today with a quote, as we like to give little positivity in everyone's day. We cannot force someone to hear a message they are not ready to receive, but we must never underestimate the power of planting a seed. Yep. So go out there and plant some seeds, people.
Yep. And come back next time and listen to us on Girls Just Want to Tell Stories. And hey, we would love for you to subscribe and to give us reviews as well. We are hoping to be around for a long time. This friendship's been growing for 40 years and we want to keep it going and keep your friendship strong too. Bye.
Bye-bye.